Hey guys, Khadroth here. Today we're going to be covering Mysterious Heroine XX Alter. Yeah, that's a mouthful. So we're going to call her XXA or Mix Ass, whichever one you guys prefer. But basically, this is yet another foreigner form of Mysterious Heroine Alter. So basically, this is going to be her summer form from Summer 9 here. She is on the second banner. She's going to be the second 4-star on this banner. And we obviously have some interesting comparisons to draw for her. She is a limited servant because of that, so you can expect that she's not going to get a ton of banners from time to time. She will have a potential to show up over and over again if we do keep getting the summer banners every year. But keep in mind, 4 stars are usually a little bit rare in that regard. Now, XX Alter here is a single target buster foreigner. So that does mean that she has quite a bit of killing power for enemies, but she's not necessarily going to be your go-to farming solution for a lot of scenarios. Taking a look at her actual stats here, you guys can see she gets 9.6k attack. This is nice and in the healthy range that we like to see. Her HP stats also not too terrible. It's about 12k. Certainly not anemic, but not too great either. Now, you can see she is star attribute, which is rather rare in and of itself. She is got 145 star absorption, which is a little bit low for a foreigner, and 14.8 star gen, which is again kind of right on the average, but it is what it is. She's got 0.65 NP charge attack, which is not the highest, but it's not the worst either. Again, buster units, especially units that have a triple buster deck, usually end up having a lot higher NP charge rate, but you can see she doesn't exactly have bad hit count, so we'll kind of talk about that here in a minute. She got 3% NP charge defense, 8% death rate, which is still rather low. She is chaotic evil. She is female. She's got the Arthur trait, the Artoria face, so the saber face trait as we like to call it, dragon, Enema Elish nullification, so she is a star unit, but not all star units have Enema Elish nullification, so she does have it. She's got existence outside the domain as a foreigner. She is a hominidae servant, a humanoid, a sovereign, aka the king trait, a round table knight, a normal servant, a space flightable servant, and a summer mode servant. So a whole bunch going on there. Her deck is a triple buster gorilla deck, as we like to call it. This means it's going to be very easy for XXA to form any sort of buster chain, and certainly in conjunction with her NP, you'll be forming them quite regularly, I suspect. Her hit counts are, again, all above average, with only her extra attack being average. So at least the hearts and the quick card shouldn't perform too bad, though admittedly there is going to be concerns over her NP gain should you get outside of the conventional sort of buster window. Now you can see her active skills here. She starts out with a self-invincibility for 2 times 3 turns, the increase to her own attack for 3 turns by up to 20%, and gaining critical stars every single turn for 3 turns by 15. She's also got a crit star bomb right on use of the skill by 15, so you're definitely not going to want for stars in a XXA comp here, especially when you start to consider things like including in a Okayest or again an Oberon that can also provide stars. So looking at that, she's got a 7-turn cooldown here. Certainly not ideal. You're not going to be able to get back to this without the 5th append in a double Okayest setup, but you could potentially work in other things like an Atlas Mystic Code or something like that. Taking a look at her second skill here, she increases her own buster performance by 30%. It's going to help out the rather low attack up that she had there. Not that the attack up itself was bad, but that just in terms of overall steroids, this is going to be another nice addition. And this one is going to also increase the star absorption of her buster cards for 3 turns by 500%, making it a lot easier for her to soak the stars to the cards that she probably is going to want to use by far the most. And again, if you're using her buster cards and you've got a double Okayest setup, you're going to be looking at getting 10% charge every single time you use those cards. So maybe even 20% if you've got both buffs on at the same time. So you're definitely going to get a lot of charge just from using the buster card anyways, though it may not be enough depending on the circumstances for what you're trying to do. She'll also increase her own critical damage for 3 turns by 30%. Unfortunately, this isn't some big, crazy 100% modifier, but it kind of makes sense given the fact that she's got all these Buster cards and is really going to be nice and synergistic. This skill is on a 6-turn cooldown, so you will be able to double it up on turns 1 and 3 in a traditional Okayest setup, or potentially do it on turns 1 and 2 if you have the 5th Append. Her third skill here reduces all enemies' gauge by 1. That's definitely nice, and it's not limited to only 3 enemies, so it's basically going to be, even in a 6 enemy type scenario, you're going to be able to drain everybody by 1. She's also then going to charge her own MP gauge by 10% based off the number of enemies that are present. So again, this could be anywhere from 10% charge all the way up to 60% charge if you're up against 6 enemy waves, though she is a single target, so you probably shouldn't be, but it is what it is. And from there, you can see that she's also going to charge her own gauge on top of that. This does level with the skill, so this is going to be an additional 20%. So this means that her minimum charge value here is going to be 30% against a single enemy. But if you're up against even, say, something like a 3 enemy wave, that's going to be an additional amount added. So you'd be looking at 50% charge. And against a 6 enemy wave, you'd be looking at 80% charge in that scenario. So definitely nice in the fact that it does scale up to the amount of enemies that you're facing. She'll also increase her own NP generation rate for 3 turns by 30%. This is definitely going to help to try and offset the NP charge attack rate that she has, and the fact that she only has the singular quick and arts card there. So definitely nice. However, this skill is also going to be on a 7-turn cooldown, so unless you get that 5th Append, you're not going to logically get back to this in a conventional double Okayest setup. At least not within 3 turns. So as we look at the passive skills, she has Existence outside the domain D. It's not the strongest. Again, she is kind of a summer variant. She has Madness Enhancement C to increase the Buster performance of her cards by 6%. So definitely nice there. Magic Resistance B for just some 17.5% debuff resistance. But then also Alt Reactor A plus to increase the debuff resistance by 21%. So this will kind of bring her up to almost 40% debuff resist, definitely making her a little bit tanky. Her third append is Anti-Assassin Attack Damage Aptitude, and you will see that she does have quite a bit of modifiers on the NP, but I'm going to say at the end of the day, this is probably not the best use of her append skill. I'm going to instead counsel you to get the skill Reloading to offset those 7-turn cooldowns, and honestly, with that in mind, she's kind of the first unit that I can really point to and say, I gotta be honest here, I don't really see why a lot of the, especially the first skill, why it had to be a 7-turn cooldown. We have plenty of skills that have better survivability, even with a steroid, that are not on a 7-turn cooldown, they're on something even lower. So this is unfortunately one of the first times that I can actually say, since the 5th Append has been out, that a unit has been designed around clutching on that 5th Append. What do I mean? Not in somebody that like was a great benefiter of it, but that it was almost a requirement for the unit because of the way they designed the unit. And that's definitely not something I like to see, so it is a criticism that I have of the devs in that regard. Still, that is going to mean that I'm going to recommend the 5th Append for you, and obviously if you can manage to get your hands on it, mana loading may be useful in scenarios where you can only be facing one enemy and get that 30% charge. Maxing out your mana loading will get you an additional 20, and then you'd be looking at a nice even 50% there. So there is that to be considered, though admittedly a 30% charge on XXA is going to function pretty well with someone like, say, Oberon as well. So really not a huge deal. 4th Append is certainly worth a look, as well as the 1st, especially for in a challenge environment. Her NP, as we already mentioned, is single target 7-hit Buster. It is definitely going to be a strong one, as it includes power modifiers for lawful and good alignment enemies by 30% for 1 turn activating first. This is definitely going to apply to not only the NP, but also any other action you take during that turn, including follow-up cards. So definitely really, really nice. It's going to deal damage to one enemy, and then from there, it's going to deal super effective 200%, not even 150%. So 200% damage against ruler class enemies. This basically means that the ruler class will be pretty much an effective class for XXA. And given the fact of how many enemies out there have lawful and good, you can see not only will she be doing pretty nice against this whole group, but there are quite a few lawful good rulers that she will just absolutely kick the butt of. So in that regard, she is definitely somebody that's going to be really, really like just kind of good for that sort of thing. Add in the fact she does have the ability to charge her gauge by 20% after the NP, like so many of the other Artoria faces do. So it's definitely a really, really nice NP, and it ultimately ends up being the thing that really kind of she's developed around and designed around. Her overcharge effect increases her own NP damage for one turn by 10%. It's not a stellar amount, but it is NP damage. So if you use an Oberon, you're going to be able to double up any source of this, and it can scale up with ranks of overcharge depending on who you're using her with. Say, for instance, somebody like Koinskaya of Dark. So there is some potential there to get even more out of it. Obviously, we don't have to talk with you guys about NP gen. This is a buster unit, so we're not really going to be regenning much with the NP other than the flat 20 that we're going to be getting off the back side of it. So talking about actual charge scenarios with XXA, we do want to consider the 5th Append. Again, it's going to be kind of nice to have the 1st and the 3rd skill back since they do have steroid and other components to them. And you guys can see, starting out with her 30% charge from that 3rd skill, and then utilizing a 50% CE, and then an Oberon 20%, we're already pretty much golden right there on turn 1. That's going to be 100% charge. She's not going to do the best damage then on turn 1, so it's something you got to consider, but it is going to allow you to at least kind of get the NP off very minimalistically. She's going to then refund 20% as her NP does, and you're just going to go ahead and combine both the double Koinskayas, so that way you can leverage, again, all of them since you couldn't get one of them in on turn 1, and fire off the NP again. From there, she's going to refund another 20%. You're going to have her 30% back, and then you're going to go ahead and utilize Oberon with his 50%. And that should be enough to fire off the final NP. So if you are facing, again, someone like a ruler, she is really going to be doing solid work there. Now, with that in mind, we can make a couple craft essence recommendations. Since we kind of know that she's going to work really well with a 50% C, obviously things like cranking or aerial drive are going to work for her. Maybe even something like Holy Night Supper. Again, I believe aerial drive and Holy Night Supper are currently available in the JP store. So by the time NA gets her, we should have those as well. And there are other things like, say, Sweet Crystal. If you want her to have, say, something like Invuln Pierce on her NP, that can definitely be another potential option, though that one's going to cost you quite a bit of rare prisms in order to get an MLB of it. But it's also another 50% CE. Now, with all of that in mind, let's talk about XXA's raw damage numbers, and you guys can see she's definitely going to be pretty solid as just normal numbers here. We're looking a lot better than maybe some of the other AoE units that we reviewed, but remember, she is a single target, so this is just going to be a little bit stronger by nature. That being said, these are neutral numbers without a Mystic Code, without a Craft Essence, without supports. So just her under her own power. And you can see the lawful good power mods coming into play there. Also the ability to double them up. And then if it's ruler, you can take any number of these and basically just double them. And that will be the exact amount that you would have in that scenario. So definitely pretty solid. Remember, she is a foreigner, so her true wheelhouse is going to be things like Again, pretenders, or even potentially something like a berserker. But naturally, adding in the ruler there is going to allow her to have yet another ability to kind of pop off. That being said, you're going to draw comparisons to, obviously your Avengers at that point. Still, taking a look at her actual numbers here, you guys can see this one's a pretty big sheet. I'd have to zoom out quite a bit, but just to get you guys in the idea of what it is, you can see XXA here with the 5th Append, Okayest of Light, Oberon, a level 100 Cranking, a level 10 Neo Plug Suit, and Anti-Man due to Okayest. You have a lot of power mods rolling around. So like we mentioned there, NP1 not doing too hot, Wave 1 not doing too hot. Wave 2, you get a little bit stronger. And Wave 3 with the Oberon buffs, you really begin to pop off. Throw in the power mod, things go up. Throw in another power mod, things go up. And remember, these are still just neutral numbers, though now we're including things like the Craft Essence, the Mystic Code, and the supports. And then now you start adding in Okayest's man trait, man plus a power mod, man plus a 2x power mod. And just remember, again, same deal. If you are operating with a ruler modifier in mind, you can basically take these and 2x them. So really, really solid numbers here across the board. And then all the way up here for NP5, you can see quite a lot of potential there should you manage to stack. I'm trying to move out of the way for you guys there. 924,149 is your final number there. So really, really like just kind of good, solid numbers out of someone like her. So now let's compare to Abby, who also just recently got a buff. Now you can see Abby's just going to start out a little bit base stronger. She also has to operate with something like cranking. She does have the terror niche, though, that she can now apply that's really going to allow her quite a bit of damage. So really, really good scalability, and she definitely can scale up significantly, especially as you start getting additional NP levels. But certainly, given the fact that XXA is a 4-star on a unit banner that you might already be rolling robustly, there's quite a bit of potential here in terms of additional MP levels for herself. And then obviously comparing her to XX herself is going to be an interesting thing. XX is obviously an arts variant, and she's going to be utilizing double Castoria Oberon and Ocean Flyer here. And you can see, still that capability to kind of outpace her sister, especially if we've got threat to humanity or a saber niche involved, certainly if you have both. So XXA still going to kind of have a little bit of work to be done, but I think a lot of her potential is also going to be in like those follow-up cards, having those triple Buster Brave chains, and really being able to pop off. And the last one we're going to compare to here is going to be Yang. Yang's obviously going to end up having double Castoria Oberon, a level 100A, and Neo Plug Suit A is a craft essence. It is a 60% anniversary CE. Just keep in mind. And it's an arts-focused one. And you can see Yang's definitely kind of somebody that without that burn niche, she's really going to kind of need some help. So to me, Yang's honestly somebody that could use an NP interlude at this point in time. But we'll see, maybe at some point in the future, they try to revisit her, maybe buff one of her skills or something like that. It just is what it is. But yeah, I do think XXA for right now is still a pretty solid option. I do think trying to compare her to units like, say, Kukulkan, obviously Kukulkan can really kind of match with her a little bit, especially if Kukulkan is in that earth niche. But I do think XXA is still going to be somebody that's going to be able to hold her own quite a bit. So it's going to be kind of up to you to determine whether or not you really want to go after her and want to use her and want to invest in her. So let me know what you guys think about XXA here. Which Ascension form is your favorite? I know mine. And again, I will be seeing you guys for the next video. Thank you guys for watching and have a good one.